There's a ruling that many Mainers have been dreading for a year, especially those in the lobster industry. Good evening, I'm Pat Callahan.
And I'm Cindy Williams. The National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration has issued new regulations on protecting endangered right whales. But many say the ruling endangers the future of one of Maine's biggest industries. More than 950 square miles of water stretching from Mount Desert Island to Casco Bay will be closed to fishing annually from October through January. That is the most lucrative period of the lobstering season. The shutdown starts this fall. In that area, NOAA will allow buoyless or ropeless fishing, a new and experimental technology that brings lobster traps to the surface using smartphone signals. However, Maine's commercial fishermen don't have that gear. The Northeast Fishery Science Center will loan some ropeless gear out in hopes that fishermen will help them test it.
Federal officials estimate 120 vessels will be affected either by the closing or by the crowding that will now occur in other open areas. It's expected to cost the industry $9 to $20 million in gear and lost catch in just the first year. NOAA representatives were asked if they considered the potential impact to fishermen in closing prime lobstering grounds at the height of the season.
We absolutely considered everything and tried our best to get a rule that balanced right whale conservation with impact on the fishery to make sure that we were conserving right whales as well as keeping the fishery open. Unfortunately, that time period is when the hotspot is anticipated and when the highest risk for right whales is. So unfortunately, that was just an overlap in that need.
The goal of the new rules is to reduce the number of vertical lines in which right whales can become entangled. By May of next year, lobster and Jonah crab fishermen will have to modify their gear so there are more traps attached to one line, and those lines will break if a whale gets caught up in it.
There are only 368 right whales left. According to NOAA, since 2017, 34 have been killed. 11 of those deaths, though, had nothing to do with fishing lines. Those whales were hit by ships. 21 of the deaths are attributed to incidents in Canada, 13 to the U.S. None of them have been connected specifically to Maine lobster fishing gear. There was mixed reaction to this announcement today, some saying the restrictions weren't strong enough, others saying they were way too harsh. The spokesman for the group Protect Maine says this is incredulous. Maine lobstermen and women are not killing right whales. Why would you penalize an iconic Maine industry for the sake of being able to say you were saving right whales? It's like cutting off an arm when it's the foot that's the problem. She goes on to say instead of saving right whales, what this decision does is endanger not only the livelihoods of many of our lobstermen and women, but also their lives. More traps on a trawl will make an already dangerous job even more so.
On the flip side, the environmental group called Oceanic says these rules don't go far enough. They say the rule will not effectively move fishing away from areas where North Atlantic right whales are expected or seen. And they say the over-reliance on weak rope, which is designed to break with the strength of an adult whale, is insufficient because it continues to put calves and juveniles directly in harm's way.
Maine's congressional delegation had asked President Biden to help protect the lobster industry from proposed regulations aimed at protecting right whales. They issued a joint statement with the governor today saying there has not been a single right whale entanglement attributed to Maine lobster fisheries in nearly 2 decades. They go on to say, we agree that we must protect the fragile right whale population, but we must do so without endangering human lives or livelihoods. What does this mean on the docks for the people whose livelihoods depend on the lobster catch?
News Center Maine's Sean Stackhouse joins us from the waterfront now with more reaction from the lobstering community. Sean?
Pat and Cindy, well, Maine's lobstermen are very concerned about the impact that these new regulations will be having, and leaders in Maine's fishing community are saying that this is going to be happening at the most lucrative time of year for the lobster industry. Now, fishermen and Maine's political leaders have been advocating for less impactful regulations for several years. As part of these regulations, buoyless and ropeless fishing will be allowed in the Gulf of Maine, but leaders in the Maine Lobster Union tell me that poses an additional danger for the fishermen, and many do not have the technology needed for that. Leaders also say because of licensing and regulations, offshore fishermen will not just simply be able to move to a different part of the Gulf of Maine to catch lobster. One of the main arguments against these regulations is that there's a lack of data to support claims that the lobster fishery presents an extreme risk to whales compared to other marine activities.
We're not hurting North Atlantic right whales. We will do everything we can to save a North Atlantic right whale, and we have. We've done weak links, we've removed thousands of miles of floating rope, all to try to save a whale that doesn't congregate in the Gulf of Maine.
Now, Maine's political leaders are promising to work with the lobster industry to help protect it here in Maine. We'll continue following this news and the impact it will have on Maine fishermen throughout the week. Live in Portland tonight, Sean Stackhouse, News Center, Maine.